there's gotta be, because if he doesn't have that rookie moment, I'm telling you, Washington hit gold. But like you saw it too with the comebacks, against the Bengals, and recently, I'm blanking, but Bears. But at the end of the day, this kid can flat out play the game of football, and it's between the ears is what he's so good at. And if he's like, I'm telling you right now, he does not want Cliff Kingsbury to go and get a head coaching job anywhere, because Cliff Kingsbury has done one
Yeah.
hell of a job, coaching him up. And Dan Quinn's kind of, been that leadership role, right? And saying, like, you can do this, mentoring him. But, Cliff is really the guy that draws out the plays and the X's and O's. And I think he's put him in the best position to succeed. But again, I just always wonder, when's that rookie moment coming? And usually a rookie in the playoffs, those two don't add up, right? But I can fully see him thriving. I really do. I think this is a unicorn type of moment. He is more than capable of leading that team up and down the field the entire game, whether that's with his legs and, again, his decision making. And if there's anything that Washington needs to get good at, is like they got to start stopping the run. So if they can do that, hold Bucky Irving to a certain amount, make Baker Mayfield one dimensional. Well, guess what? Jay and Dale's going to have more opportunities to score the ball at a high number. So I love that pick. I'm a big fan of Jay Daniels. If you can't see, I think he's really going to be a really good player for years to come, as long as he can stay healthy. And health is always going to be the main factor. Moving on, I got Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon higher on the 0.5 rushing and receiving touchdowns. This guy has just flat out balled this year, right? And I think CJ Stroud beginning to take strides and become a good quarterback, right? Not great quarterback, we'll say good, whether that's top 10 or slightly outside the top 10. But Joe Mixon is a big key piece to that. Balancing that attack, that offense, finding ways to make things happen coming out of the backfield. And I fully believe he will not run the ball as well as people, think he may, but he's going to score a touchdown. And whether that's rushing or receiving, you choose. That's the beauty in working with underdog. It gives you that flexibility. And that's why I think 0.5 rushing and receiving touchdowns is higher. I think he gets the end zone.
Yeah, listen, he's scored 12 times this year. I think he missed maybe missed one or two due to injury, but yeah, I mean, you do the math on that. He's likely to get a score when he plays. So certainly it's a good one there. I'm actually going with his counterpart in this matchup. I like J.K. Dobbins. Listen, we know how Harbaugh wants to play. This game, it's weird because while the Texans are home, the Chargers just feel like they're built for playoff football. They have a very good offense and defensive line. You have a defense that always travels, and Harbaugh's committed to running the football, regardless who's in the backfield. So I like Dobbins. I like his higher than 61.5 rushing yards. I think they're going to tilt the rock and rely on him.
I love that. I think Dobbins, needs to have a moment for himself too. He's been through the ringer with injuries, man. And I think this is his moment and opportunity, to establish the line of scrimmage. And like you said, Harbaugh loves using his running backs at a high number. Blake Corum at Michigan, I mean, that guy was getting every goal line touch possible. So he loves establishing that line of scrimmage. Justin Herbert throwing the rock everywhere. My goodness, are they set up for great success moving forward. A.J. Brown for me against Green Bay. I have him lower on 84.5 receiving yards. I just look at the Colts. I look at A.J. Brown and I say, can Jalen Hurts or Kenny Pickett, whoever may be playing, I think Hurts is still in concussion protocol. If not,
Hurts, I think, did practice today is what I saw.
And if so, I get it. Like Kenny Pickett's going to try to feed. If there's any, I guess, number to kind of emphasize is his receptions for A.J. Brown, because if Kenny Pickett's in, I think the ball's going to him more so than Devontae Smith because Kenny Pickett really can't throw the ball that deep. Lower on 84.5, regardless of who plays at the quarterback position. Look, Jalen Hurts and that team, they emphasize the running ball. It's going to be a Saquon party. And Green Bay, I think, will have a troubled time trying to stop, Saquon at the line of scrimmage. But for me, I think AJ Brown gets around 70 receiving yards, but I think 84.5 is just a little too much for my liking. So I'm going lower on that.
It does feel a little high, especially not knowing who might, take the snap under center for them. You also would figure, regardless of who plays, Saquon's getting a lot of touches, a lot of touches. So I definitely don't dislike that pick at all. Regardless of who's at quarterback, I think the game plan is going to be kind of the same in terms of, hey, it's Philly, it's cold. So we got a 2,000-yard running back in the backfield.
Got to protect
Let's
him.
use him.
Yeah.
And he's rested.
Yep.
I'm going to go with George Pickens, higher than 3.5 receptions. He caught, one ball for 0 yards last week against the Bengals, and he made his frustrations very much heard. And I don't like the Steelers' chances this weekend, but you got to figure Pickens was probably in Wilson's ear all week. Like, if we have any chance, I'm the playmaker on this team. Get me the ball. I almost think it's scary how low they set the total to, because, maybe that's an indictment on Russell Wilson, and that even more reason to play Shark's pick under on Wilson's passing yards. So that's why I'm not taking his yards. I'm taking his receptions. I think they're going to try and feed him the rock, get him screens, bubble screens, little slanting cuts. Just try and get Pickens the rock any way they can, because he's one of the few playmakers that they have. So just another bounce back spot, another bounce back pick. And this is a guy who, he's nuts. George Pickens is crazy, but I almost like that in this situation. So
you got to do it, because look at Devontae Adams, look at Jamar Chase. There are games where those guys don't get fed the ball, and what they do the next is they absolutely become beasts, right? And they have internal discussions. If you look at George Pickens, like you said, he is their receiver here. He is their guy. So Russell Wilson has to get him the ball. And it's funny you mention it, but even if he gets 1 or 2, catches, and he has 5 total yards, at least, you're in the running when it comes to, the reception. So, and obviously, the second half, it plays a big factor too. But yeah, I can fully see that. 3.5, I think is certainly low. And I really think that he could definitely hit that. So I got Zach Ertz to finish this out. I like the way Zach Ertz is finding a way to get open for Jayden Daniels. 36.5 receiving yards. I got the higher on that. They're playing Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay's linebacking core is pretty plain. Their defense isn't the best. Maybe their secondary might be the strongest, but without Winfield, I think they're beatable, right? They're all around beatable. I think Zach Ertz will, find a way to get 50 receiving yards and a touchdown. I talked to you about this a lot, Ticket. When you have a young quarterback, who is the best player to go to on that team to be the security blanket? It's the tight end. Look at Drake May and look at Hunter Henry, right? Again, Jayden Daniels and Ertz. Even when Hurts for the Eagles, he had Ertz and he had Goddard, right? So you got to imagine that Zach Ertz and Jayden Daniels will find a way to continue that chemistry throughout the game. Ertz is find a way to get open. So, try to find a way to get him the ball. Allow him to become the second playmaker. Zacchaeus is playing out of his mind. McLaurin's kind of sitting back, and Zacchaeus is taking all the touches. Jamison Crowder as well. But Ertz is a guy that will get targeted a lot. And I think 36.5 is a good number. But I think higher on that number for sure. I think 50. We are going to get into the playoff matchups. We got a lot of games, as Ticket mentioned, this week. You got Kansas City on a bye. You got Detroit on a bye. So let's talk about these games. You got number 5 seed Chargers, which we mentioned earlier, at the Houston Texans. It's the 4:30 game. Ticket, who you got in that game?
I think I talked about it a little bit earlier with maybe gleaning a little bit to who I like in it, but it's hard not to like the Chargers, and I feel like that's the easy, trendy pick. I trust Harbaugh. It's not a knock on DeMeco Ryans. I think he's a very good head coach. He's done a great job turning around that program in Houston. I think if you told someone 2 years ago that he's going to take over a 1-15 team, and they're going to have back-to-back division titles, they would say, "Where'd you get that weed?" So, I definitely like D'Amico Ryans, but this is just the Texans'
It's all.
offensive line stinks. It can't protect anybody, and unfortunately for C.J. Stroud, he is the
Yeah.
anybody that is behind center. It feels like every time I've watched the Texans too in prime time, that gets magnified. That's my biggest takeaway is that they can't protect Stroud. And if you can't protect Stroud, this is a very good Chargers front. They're actually very
Oh
good all
yeah.
over defensively. One of the best defensive units in the league. And then you go to the flip side of the ball and you look at what the Chargers do offensively, and they don't make mistakes. They have the fewest turnovers in the league. They run the football, and they have a prolific quarterback. So you're telling me I get the better head coach, the better quarterback, the better O-line, the better defense. I don't know how I don't pick the Chargers.
Yeah, and
Give me
when
the
I'm looking at
Chargers.
this matchup too, I think Ryans, I think Harbaugh, I think Campbell, like those guys are all leaders of men, right? They are who they are. Like Dan Campbell is a former player, D'Amico Ryans is a former player. Harbaugh has a chip on his shoulder, because of his brother's success. So he's always going to be, in that running as well. But I think what's important for, the Chargers to recognize is they have a complete team, right? And they can make a deep run. And Houston, they don't have enough pieces, right? Like Tank Dell, sorry, like, breaking your leg, it's awful. Stephon Diggs, same regard with the injuries. They just don't have enough talent around CJ Stroud. And when you have a bad offensive line, what do? You rely on your weapons. And so I don't think he's going to be able to rely on his weapons. And that's why I do have 0.5 higher with Joe Mixon on the rushing touchdowns or receiving, because I think he'll get a touchdown. I just don't think he'll have success running the ball on the ground, because the Chargers are a highly touted defense in NFL ranks. And so I got the Chargers. I think they win. I would say around, I don't know, 37-20. I think it's actually going to be a pretty high
Ooh,
scoring game. Like
really
their opportunity offensively, the Chargers, and I think they're going to be ready to play. And so I think they're definitely going to. I think it's going to be high scoring on their end, and their defense is absolutely going to stop C.J. Stroud in that offense. Moving on to the next one, Steelers, number 6 seed at the Baltimore Ravens. Who you got?
Oof. And hard not to go chalk here again. The only thing I can really think of is like the Steelers have not been playing great ball lately. And sometimes, you know what I mean? Like it's a division
Yep.
rivalry still, a huge
Yep.
rivalry, as we know. I just wonder if the Ravens get cute. Like if they get too cute, if they get away from what they've been doing offensively all year. And sometimes that's happened. They've fallen in love with like throwing too much with Lamar. And historically, Lamar has struggled against the Steelers. We referenced his numbers and issues on a couple episodes ago on our podcast when talking about this matchup. And obviously, Lamar had no issues. I mean, I think he had 4 or 5 touchdowns. Absolutely shredded them and continuing to make a strong case for winning his 3rd MVP. But even if they get cute and they get away from what they've been doing all season, I just don't see the
It
Steelers
doesn't
scoring
matter.
enough. And as much as the Steelers want to shrink the game, like unless they get, I think at least 2 to 3 turnovers, I don't think they have a shot in this one. Or getting like a special team play, a broke block kick. They need something to get them sparked and keep this game close. I don't see that happening. I'm going with the Ravens. I do think it could be close early just because Tomlin's a great coach. There's a lot of familiarity. But I think the better team is clearly Baltimore, and I think they'll pull away in the second half.
Derrick Henry is going to absolutely dominate the line of scrimmage. I don't care that the Steelers have a good defense. I don't think it matters in the playoffs. Every team is going to be good. That's why they're there, right? But I think they're going to make an emphasis on establishing the run early with Derrick Henry. And guess what? When that happens, every single hole opens up. Lamar Jackson can then play the RPO action, right? And he can start using his tight ends, or he can start using his legs. So watch Derrick Henry early on in this game. He's going to establish the run at a high usage rate. I really think they're going to carry a lot of balls with him. But again, when you go back to Baltimore and the Cleveland Browns, as a couple of years ago, or at this point 3 or 4 years ago, I look at Lamar Jackson does get cute sometimes.